Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy. Here we share new confessions every day.
They looked at me like I should be grateful to still have a chair in the room. After 4 years of giving them my nights, my weekends, my ideas, they sat me down in a gray-walled conference room, slid a paper across the table, and told me I was too expensive to keep around unless I agreed to cut my own salary by more than half. 60%. That's not a cut. That's a warning shot. Take this or get out. And they knew. They knew I was a single mom. They knew my son Finn had medical bills. They knew my rent in the outskirts of Portland wasn't some luxury. It was survival. But none of that mattered to them. I was just another line item on a spreadsheet they didn't want to carry into the next fiscal quarter. My name is Marla Grayson, and I was the Human Resources Manager at Whitbridge Analytics, a medium-sized consultancy firm based out of Oregon. Or, I guess I used to be. Let me rewind just a little. It started with a calendar invite titled Quick Sync Compensation Planning, which sounded like something I should have been leading, not attending. I walked in expecting to help strategize performance bonuses or maybe restructuring for Q4. Instead, Shelley, our VP of Operations, and Kirk, the ever-slick Director of Finance, were already seated like school principals preparing to scold a kid who got caught stealing lunch money. They didn't even let me sit down before Shelley launched into it. We've been reviewing salary alignments, Marla. Unfortunately, given where the company's heading and your current comp level, we're going to need to make some changes. She used the kind of corporate tone that wraps cruelty in euphemism. They pushed a single sheet of paper across the table. I blinked. Read it. Reread it. A 60% pay reduction. Effective immediately. Voluntary, on paper. But the subtext was clear. Either I sign, or I make them find someone cheaper to replace me. I looked up. I asked the obvious question. Why me? Shelley smiled. Because we know you'll understand. That hit me harder than the numbers on the page. They weren't asking because I was underperforming, or because the company was tanking. They asked me because they thought I wouldn't fight back. Because I was understanding. Because I was alone. That was the moment I knew. They never respected me. Not as a professional. Not as a woman. Certainly not as a mother doing her damn best to stay afloat. I didn't speak. I stood up, nodded once, and left the paper right there on the table. They didn't follow me. They didn't have to. They thought I'd come crawling back the next day, apologizing, signing, saying something pathetic like, "I'll make it work." They had no idea who I really was. That night, after I put Finn to bed, I opened my laptop and stared at a number I had saved a year ago but never used. Tobias Vance, CEO of Crucible Insights, our biggest competitor. We'd spoken once at a panel on workforce ethics. He told me, "If you ever get tired of putting out other people's fires, come build something that won't burn down beneath you." At the time I laughed. I thought I'd never leave Whitbridge. I was loyal. I thought they valued me. Now I knew better. I stared at his number. My hands were shaking. And then I called. When Tobias answered, he didn't say hello. He said, "What took you so long?" I blinked. For a second, I actually thought I had misdialed. My throat tightened. "It's Marla Grayson," I said because I didn't know what else to say. "From Whitbridge." "I know exactly who you are," he replied. "You're the reason half their talent stayed as long as they did." Silence. "You still there?" Yeah. I just didn't expect." "You want to come in tomorrow?" he interrupted. "Let's talk in person." Just like that. No questions. No slow walk. No "we'll get back to you" crap. It wasn't flattery. It was clarity. This man already knew what I brought to the table. And unlike Whitbridge, he had no interest in making me beg for a seat. The next morning, I dropped Finn off at school, kissed his forehead, and told him Mommy had a big grown-up meeting. I didn't tell him what kind. He's only 6. But he looked up at me with that wide-eyed seriousness kids get sometimes and said, "You got this." It damn near broke me. Crucible's offices were across the river, in a modern steel and glass building that practically screamed, "We know what we're doing." I walked in wearing the same gray blazer I'd had for years, the one that had gotten me through layoffs, restructures, and quarterly board meetings. But this time it felt like armor. Tobias greeted me himself. Tall, dark suit, That look in his eye like he's always 2 steps ahead and already knows how this ends. I'd offer coffee, but I have a feeling you want more than that. We talked for 2 hours. But let me be clear, it wasn't an interview. It was a negotiation between two people who already knew they needed each other. He asked about Whitbread's internal culture, the tools they used, how they'd been bleeding staff quietly for the last 8 months, and how I had been the one convincing people to stay. I told him the truth. I told him everything. And when I was done, he leaned back, crossed one leg over the other, and said, "We were going to wait 3 more weeks before making you an offer. Let them make one more mistake. But it looks like they beat us to it." He slid a folder across the table. I almost laughed. Inside an offer. Real money. Full benefits. Remote flex. A leadership role in organizational strategy, not just hiring and firing. And a sign-on bonus that made my knees go weak. "I know you're a mother, Marla," he added. "We built Crucible to be the kind of company where that's not a weakness. It's a superpower." My hands were shaking again. But not from fear this time. From rage. From vindication. From a kind of exhausted relief that someone finally saw me, really saw me, and said, "Yes, we want you." I accepted on the spot. No theatrics. No hesitation. That afternoon, I sent my resignation letter to Whitbread. No explanation. No goodbye drinks. Just a single line. Effective immediately. Then I turned off my phone. They didn't call until the next morning. First Shelley. Then Kirk. Then the actual COO Russell, who hadn't spoken to me directly in almost a year. My inbox was a flood of, "Can we talk? This is a misunderstanding," and my personal favorite. "Let's not do anything rash." Rash? You offered a single mom a 60% pay cut in the middle of a housing crisis and expected her to smile about it. That's rash. I didn't answer any of them. Because I was already gone. And trust me, they had no idea what was coming next. 3 days after I left Whitbread, they still hadn't figured out how to spin the story, which meant they did what panicked people always do. They lied. I started getting texts from old coworkers, people I'd mentored, coached through burnout, helped survive layoffs. People I'd quietly protected while the higher-ups played politics. "Marla, I heard you just ghosted? They said you left without notice. That you were overwhelmed. Are you okay?" Overwhelmed? That word made my skin crawl. They couldn't say I'd left for a better role, because that would make them look weak. They couldn't admit they tried to slash my salary, because that would expose their strategy. So they said I cracked. That I broke under pressure. That I wasn't handling things well. Funny how the people who break you try to say you broke yourself. Meanwhile, at Crucible, Tobias handed me my first real project, a full internal audit of our people strategy. Not a surface-level HR cleanup. He wanted a full teardown and rebuild. Hiring practices. Equity distribution. Mental health protocols. Culture shifts. It was the kind of project that got you noticed in Forbes, not just in Slack. He didn't want me to fit in. He wanted me to transform the damn place. And I knew exactly where to start. Whitbread had always painted Crucible as the cool but messy competitor, too fast-moving, too modern, not structured enough. But the truth? Crucible was lean, disciplined, and 10 times more human than anything I'd seen across that river. There were parents on the leadership team. People openly took mental health days. One of the engineers had a standing block on her calendar every afternoon for Lego time with daughter, do not reschedule. And no one mocked her for it. I remember standing in the elevator one morning, holding a matcha latte someone had brought me just because I looked focused, and thinking, this is what it feels like to be safe. But safety didn't mean passivity. Because a week after I started, Crucible launched something big. We announced a major hiring initiative, a full expansion into strategic consulting, offering exactly the kind of services Whitbread built its name on. And guess who was leading the rollout? Me. My photo. My name. My press quotes. Marla Grayson joins Crucible Insights to lead human-centric transformation initiative across strategic consulting. It hit LinkedIn like a hammer. By noon, Shelley had blocked me. By 3, Kirk posted a vague, passive-aggressive status about loyalty being underrated these days. And that night, I got a message from one of the junior recruiters still stuck inside Whitbridge. You just broke them. I hope you know that. Let me be clear, I didn't leave Whitbridge for revenge. I left because they tried to shrink me. Tried to teach me that my circumstances, single mom, female leader, working class roots, made me disposable. But the thing about people like me, we grow in pressure. We sharpen in silence. And we remember everything. It started with a letter. A thick, cream-colored envelope delivered to Crucible's front desk, addressed directly to me in handwriting that looked like it belonged on wedding invitations. Inside, a cease and desist. Whitbridge was accusing me of misappropriation of internal information and violating the terms of confidentiality during competitive transition. Translation: you left and made us look stupid. Now we're reaching for anything we can use to scare you silent. I sat with it in my lap for a full minute. Not angry, not scared, just amused. Because I knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't about trade secrets. I hadn't touched anything proprietary. This was about shame. They were embarrassed that I left. Embarrassed that the narrative slipped out of their hands. Embarrassed that I wasn't begging to come back. And now they wanted to punish me for choosing myself. Tobias read the letter and chuckled. That low, dangerous kind of laugh people do when they see their enemies exposing their own throats. Let legal handle it, he said. Unless you want to go public. We'll back you either way. But I didn't want a legal battle. I wanted something cleaner, colder, permanent. So I made a different kind of call. That evening, I reached out to a contact I'd met at a conference the year before, Isadora Chen, a sharp, brilliant writer who ran a respected column on unethical workplace culture in Fast Company. We had a quick Zoom. I told her what happened, the offer, the pressure, the 60% cut, the retaliation. I showed her the letter. She just blinked and said, I've been waiting for a story like this. The article dropped 4 days later. When they tried to cut her pay by 60%, she built a ladder and climbed over the wall. My name was front and center. Whitbridge was named directly. Quotes from others who'd left quietly over the past year started pouring in, anonymously at first, then bold and public. The whole thing exploded. Employees started tagging each other in the comments. Isn't this what happened to you? Others wrote, now it all makes sense. One former manager who'd been let go last spring wrote, she was the backbone of that place. They snapped their own spine. Whitbridge's response. A canned PR statement about respecting employee privacy and being committed to internal review processes. But the damage was done. Within a week, Crucible's inbox was flooded with job applications, most of them from Whitbridge employees. We had to temporarily close external hiring just to keep up. I watched it all unfold from my desk, sipping tea while Finn sat beside me on a Saturday morning drawing nights with cardboard swords. And I realized something. I didn't just walk away. I took their future with me. And you know what? I didn't feel guilty. Because they thought I would crawl. They thought motherhood made me desperate. They thought kindness made me weak. But they forgot the most important rule in business and in life. Never bet against a woman who has everything to lose. It's been 6 months. Sometimes I still wake up before the alarm, heart racing, thinking I'm late for a meeting I don't even work at anymore. Old habits take time to die. But then I look over and see Finn curled against the pillow, breathing soft and steady, the early sunlight spilling over his cheek like he's wrapped in gold. And I remember, I made it out. We made it out. I never responded to Whitbridge's last letter. Their case evaporated. Crucible's legal team sent one brutal reply that basically said, try it. We dare you. And then it was silence. I heard that Shelley resigned to pursue other opportunities. Kirk was quietly moved to a non-strategic role. Rumor is, the board wasn't impressed with how they handled, well, me. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. Because by then, I was too busy building. Crucible made me VP of Organizational Integrity, a role Tobias created with me in mind. I head up teams now, not just people, systems, policies, pipelines that protect real humans, not just revenue. We hired dozens of people in the last quarter. Not one of them had to negotiate down because of their gender, parental status, or background. And when one of our engineers, brilliant, introverted, used to being overlooked, asked if she was really qualified enough to lead a new project. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "They will doubt you. Don't help them do it." Because that's what no one said to me when I needed it. Now I say it to every woman who walks through my door. Last week, I picked Finn up early from school and surprised him with a trip to the coast. He screamed when he saw the ocean. Told me it was so big it makes your brain stretch. We ran through the sand until our shoes filled with it. Built a crooked little sandcastle. Ate fish tacos from a shack run by a woman named Coral who gave Finn free churros just because he told her I was the best mom in the galaxy. And when we sat on the hood of my car watching the sun drop into the sea, he leaned against me and whispered, "You're not tired anymore." He was right. Not because the world suddenly got easier, but because I'm finally standing on ground that doesn't sink beneath me. They tried to gut my paycheck and my dignity in the same breath. Tried to shrink me until I believed that survival was the best I could do. But I didn't survive. I outgrew them. And now, I'm not scared. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm just free.